Chair.
The honourable member. I call Stephen Browning.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to address some of the issues that have come up from Labor in regards to the plants and the patent. They seem to think that we will lose the advantages that we've had in the development of different kiwi fruit and apples, and it is around the Plant Varieties Act. There's a distinct difference between a patent and the protections in the Plant Varieties Act, and those very plants that they're talking of are protected regardless of my supplementary order paper, because they're protected under a very strong Plant Varieties Act that is not a patent. And I will mention some of the limits or exemption to a grant holder's rights, which allows a more communal approach or reach into those plants that have got those protections. There is very good protection for those people that have bred up or put that effort in to get those plants to fruition and then out onto the market. But other persons are free to grow or use a protected variety for non-commercial purposes. So the community at large can benefit, but the commercial aspect is still protected for those that have developed them. Other persons are free to use the plants or parts of the protected variety for human consumption or other non-propagating purposes. They are free to use a protected variety for plant breeding, although the repeated use of a protected variety for the commercial production of a F1 hybrid seed is not permitted without the authority of the rights holder. So there's some pretty strong protections for the plant varieties breeder, but they don't need a patent. And so I think it would be good if our colleagues in Labor have a rethink there, because it certainly does not cut off that innovation and the commercial benefit for those that do that development. But on a moral level, life is not an invention and should not be owned by any one person or corporation. Unfortunately, with a patent, with just a little addition of a single gene can become the invention of someone who claims private ownership. And so any animal, bacteria, cell, virus or algae could be patented. And as I say, we've already got plants covered elsewhere. And I'll refer to, just run through a little bit of history of where this has run amok internationally with the patenting. And I will use plants as an example, even though we're not patenting them, but the more extreme version. And you can add that once you start to get these traits, bacterial traits or viruses or whatever, and putting them into plants, then you start to get into the world of patents. And in 1994, the US Plant Variety Protection Act was amended, incentivising breeders who, by no longer allowing farmers to save seed without a licence from the owner of the seed variety, and that ultimately they got into the area of patents. As a result, the farmers became bound to pay licence fees and royalties to the companies developing them, despite their prior universal right to save, plant and exchange seed from their own harvests, requiring the skills and knowledge of their local localities. Now, modern biotech companies have claimed the rights over the entire species, prevented access to their inventions by other scientists. But it was the fact that they were able to allow for patents in there that really locked things up. The advent of patenting genes was followed by an extremely successful float on the stock market of a company called GeneTech, raised huge money. Then those companies then saw the potential of a new stream of income, and they encouraged development, and that has been the monopolisation that I mentioned earlier of the agricultural seed market and significant collapse of traditional seed markets. And there's plenty of research supporting that. Now, Monsanto actually got a patent on Roundup, the weed killer, and it was due to lapse after a period of time. So how are they going to manage and maintain that market? Well, they patented some crops and using what they call the events. The event is using some material from microorganism and putting it in. Mr. Chair, I'd like to...
Stephen Browning.
Thank you. And so with these events as such being patented and then being able to express that through crops, they benefited because they had this Roundup ready technology tied into their genetically modified seeds, and the technology fee was charged to farmers, and then the patented seeds, they had to pay a per acre royalty, and then they were also then bound by an agreement that prevents them from saving the seed for planting in a subsequent year, instead buying new seeds every year. There's followed lots and lots of litigation about farmers not using the GM seeds, and I've seen this same thing in Australia, and I'm over there shortly, and we'll be looking at some other situations where things have gone bad from contamination. But it's the actual microorganisms are involved in this. It's not just it's not the plants traditionally protected under the Plant Varieties Act. We're getting into all aspects of life and the genetic material being able to be patented. Now, that went wrong because they became quite monopolistic in the way they've managed that in the States and some other countries. And with the increased use of the herbicides, they've now got resistance, so now they're patenting and doing, and other companies doing new genetically modified varieties. And so, and they're now right through to having varieties modified so they can spray 2,4-D on them as well, just so they can retain control of their food chain and be able to sell their herbicides and pesticides, which, while we were told would not increase in use, in fact have increased hugely, significantly. So now there's new varieties coming through with other microorganisms and other traits being developed, and note we say against the patenting of traits for very, very good reason, because this allows this control that's happened over there. Mr. Chair, this isn't about blocking innovation. It is about ensuring access to the community, to farmers, to researchers, to medicine, of all these traits, of these parts of life, the genetic material, the microbes, algae, animals, the cells of animals, the different parts of animals that, with a little tweak, something that they can own. It's everybody's, and my colleague Materia Ture before talking about the issues around the Māori Advisory Board and the group that would give recommendations if asked by the Commissioner of Patents. That comes down to the same core, the same aspect, right down to the basis of life and whether it should be patentable. I hope colleagues in other parties will reconsider and support both all of the Green Party SOPs that will make this bill a real strong, fantastic, innovative bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chair.
I call the Honourable Member Clea Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to Part 2